Very quickly, I just want to go through what these fellows bring together. The name Ashoka, or the British spelled it with an A at the back, but the word is Ashok. So Shok meaning sorrow, and Ashok meaning the absence of sorrow. So anybody who works for the absence of sorrow is a very critical part of this meaning. But the second part is the Emperor Ashoka, who was head of the Mauryan empire, probably the biggest empire in the 3rd century BC. And the story of his life is very interesting because for about half of his life, he was a very strong emperor and a conqueror. But two things happened in his life. One was when he was governor in Taxila, which is present-day Pakistan, he married a Buddhist wife. And she made sure that he would not be able to touch their children until he renounced violence. And so this was always in the back of his mind, that he couldn't touch his children until he gave up the sword. But while he was fighting in present-day Orissa, it's a village called Kalinga, he was inspecting his battlefield, and he saw a wounded soldier, and he wanted to offer water. And this wounded soldier said, I would rather die than drink from your hand. These two incidents changed his life completely. And not only did he renounce violence, he decided to dedicate the rest of his life to becoming a benevolent emperor. So the reason why Ashoka adopted this name is A, the literal meaning, but B, all of us, we will pursue fame, we will pursue money, we will pursue power, and then something will happen. And on that day, you will decide to use all your energy and all your creativity and all your wealth to changing the system that resulted in whatever you faced. So around the world, you will meet these fellows all the time, and they'll tell you your story. You meet Javed in India. He started a campaign where the disabled had to be counted. Now, the Indian government never counted the disabled in the census. And he came up with this idea that unless you are counted, you don't matter. And so changed the whole system that everybody had to be counted. Because if you're not counted, nothing happens. And he found that 6% of Indians were disabled. These are people who demystify technology. Today you look at the world where 1.5 billion people are going to have mobile phones. But how many of you realize that half of humanity has never said hello on the phone? Technologies need to be demystified. Opening and serving underserved markets. There is a huge population of the world that is underserved. People who cannot access cement, people who cannot access technologies, people who cannot access credit, people, you mentioned Grameen Bank. So this whole market that is underserved by the markets. And so you find, again, people who are always opening these underserved markets. Pricing the poor out of the market. David Green, you mentioned, hearing aid was very expensive. David Green brought the price down so that the poor could afford it. The ocular lens, for cataract was very expensive, bringing the price down. So making sure that the price never get, the poor never get priced out of the market. Bridging surpluses and gaps. There's a fellow in Delhi, his name is Amsu Gupta. In Delhi or any city in the world, if you have a dining table that you need to change, you have 6 chairs. 4 are wobbly, 2 are still good. You get rid of the 4, you buy 6 chairs. What happens to the 2? You store it somewhere. He realized that these 2 chairs can actually be used to upgrade 2 barber shops in rural India. So an urban surplus can become a rural resource. Okay, another great idea. Giving markets morality. After lots of round tables, between the business and the social sector, there is a bakery cafe or a fast food joint in Kathmandu, and the only people they hire are deaf and dumb. Now, the only innovation that was required for this business plan was that you had to have a menu where you could point at the food. But this is, where you see markets now begin to get morality. For example, this morning when I was looking at the news, there is a strike in South Africa in the gold mines. And the union leader was saying the gold miner gets paid 28,000 rands, whereas the CEO of the gold company is paid 9 million rands. So markets need to be given morality. So who provides this morality? Well, social entrepreneurs provide this morality. Making stakeholders into shareholders. Very often, most nonprofits look at people as stakeholders, but then they're never made into shareholders. For example, when we started, the system of protected areas in Nepal, it was only 11% of Nepal was protected. And the people outside the park suffered Because, it's one thing to go to Nepal for 3 days to take pictures of rhinos, but if you have to live next to rhinos every day, it's a different story. So the people had to go into the park, A, to collect firewood, but B, to graze their animals. And at night, the animals would come across the rivers and then eat their crops. So we had a park and people conflict. We introduced a very simple technology, a biogas technology, where every family, built their own biogas plant. Now, the biogas plant, what it does is it's a digester, uses the methane, to both light and cook. And the raw material for the methane is the cow dung, so you have to stall feed your animals. So it was, quite successful. But then you needed some money in order to actually build those plants. So the law, the National Parks Act, was amended so that 50% of the income of the national park went to the community living next to the national park. So today, from 11% national park and a park and people conflict, we've gone to 19% of Nepal being protected. So 19% of the country is today a national park. In addition to that, adjoining the buffer areas, we have 14% additional forest, which is community forest. How did we get to community forest? Well, parcels of land, the legal holding or the legal papers for the land was given to the people. Number two, the written management plan was endorsed by every member of the community. And thirdly, there was an equitable sharing of the cost and benefits. So by putting these three instruments into place, another additional 14% of Nepal is community forest. So there are ways in which you make those stakeholders also shareholders. So, the list, just goes on, and I'm going to, wrap up because, I hope that this is, just a conversation which will lead to a bigger conversation with the panelists. Some of the challenges that fellows face, and Pamela, articulated some of them. Large-scale system change. How to take these really successful, wonderful ideas and take them to scale. Now, scale is one word, and then again from Pamela's presentation, if it is not scale, then spread. So how do we get to scale, or how do we spread? So this is an immense challenge that many, social entrepreneurs have. The second problem is bridging the business and the social sector. And I have to tell you this story, it comes from the ancient, folklore that is told, and it's about a two-headed bird. So this two-headed bird was walking around, and they would get along very well. But one day, one head saw a nice sweet, and he looked at the other head and thought it was sleeping or dozing, so decided not to share this sweet. And so quickly ate the sweet, but the other head saw it. So the other head now started thinking, why didn't this other head share that with me? So he started thinking, and got into this depression cycle to a point where this other head decided to commit suicide. So this other head took poison, and it went to the same stomach, so both the heads died. So I think this is the situation between business and the social sector. And it is a very important, gulf that we need to bridge. Because one side thinks, oh, these charitable people, they get all these donations, they get all this free money, unaccountable, they do whatever they like. The other side says this is only about profit, they'll do anything for money. So this sort of poison that exists, definitely needs to be bridged, a big challenge. Group entrepreneurship. How do you get two social entrepreneurs to work together? Huge challenge. They are such personalities, they are such egos, they are such, people, it's very difficult to get them to work together. But in reality, if you want to really bring change in the world, 1 + 1 has to become 11. 2 is not good enough. 1 + 1 + 1 has to become 111. 3 is not good enough. And there is a real challenge in attaining group entrepreneurship. Making poverty history, is a very nice soundbite that all of us have been fed in the last, few weeks, especially with concerts, and you have, film actors up there. But what we've realized is it's not just poverty, as charity that is important. How do we go from charity to inclusiveness? From inclusiveness to a just society, and from a just society to peace. Because the conflicts around the world is a result, maybe initially, of poverty. But then it leads to many other things. And so if you are looking for peaceful societies, there's a long way to go. And so again, how do we all contribute towards creating a peaceful world? Because right now, the conflict, for some people, is worth $900 billion. That's the weapon, market. And the last thing is that there is a lot being done, there's a lot being said, But I think there is, a lot that needs to be done in terms of sharing our experiences, sharing our knowledge, sharing our insights, so that we don't repeat the past. And so I'll just end by saying, good decisions come from experience, but experience itself consists of several bad decisions. And now that we've made the bad decisions, how do we share these experiences so that we get over, some of that inertia? So I'm going to end here so that hopefully, we have a real, lively discussion. Again, thank you very much for having me here.